Here in the North Georgia mountains, it is cold and rainy and cloudy and miserable, which is pretty much in keeping with what I'm feeling right now because of what happened over the weekend, what this orange son of a bitch Donald Trump did over the weekend, among other things. But one of the worst things he has done was to, first of all, order a stop to military assistance to Ukraine as it struggles against Trump's buddy, Vladimir Putin. And then the orange son of a bitch ordered a stop to U.S. intelligence that would help Ukraine defend itself. Trump is a fucking killer, but he is a cowardly killer. He's the type of killer that likes to see people die or likes to hear about people die as a result of his actions. This is one sick son of a bitch. I realize there's an awful lot going on in this country that this putrid bastard is doing to us, and I hope momentum is billing to run this son of a bitch out of town. It's not there yet, but in the meantime, as he is destroying the U.S. economy, as he is severely fucking over American veterans and our allies overseas and people through USAID who have come to depend on the United States for life. This orange, rotten bastard is destroying everything he puts his little tiny hands on. And not a single Christian in the House or the Senate is raising his or her voice. Not one in protest. Oh, they're raising their voices, all right, in support of this murderous fucker. You know, I've said this before. If ever I questioned the Christian religion because of the behavior of its adherents, nothing like what has happened since Trump was puked up on the political scene, nothing has made me more aware that these American Christian fascists are just filth, liars, betrayers. What did Gandhi say 50 years ago, 80 years ago, when he said, "I like your Christ, I'm not sure about your Christians"? What a putrid mass of scum these people are. Okay, deep breath, Mike. Over the weekend, as a result of this filthy pig Donald Trump's actions, the Russians unleashed, I believe on Friday and Saturday and possibly on Sunday, an enormous barrage of missiles against apartment houses, apartment complexes in Ukraine, slaughtering more people. And this fucking bum Trump, now, from what I understand, Trump is sticking his filthy goddamn brain-dead head into negotiations, supposed negotiations, that are supposed to start in the homeland of an axe murderer. That would be Saudi Arabia. Trump is now demanding, more or less, that Zelensky get the fuck out of office, that Ukraine give up territory to the Russians, territory that the Russians have taken by force through slaughtering people. I'm going to get to that in a second. So now word is starting to filter out from the sewer that this orange bastard dwells in, that he is going to demand Zelensky leave the country, leave his own country. I mean, this is beyond an outrage. This gets into insanity, total fucking insanity. Trump is like a fucking cannibal. But ever since Zelensky said to him all those years ago, "No, I'm not going to start a phony investigation into the Biden family," Trump has lost his shit. You don't do that with Trump. You don't do that with a fucking Nazi insane prick like Donald Trump. You do exactly what Donald Trump says, or he will come after you. And this is what I don't understand. All these Christians in the House and the Senate, Trump came after them individually and whipped their little white asses into shape to the point where not one of them now will speak out about what's going on. Not one. How does that happen? How did so many of these Republican Christians in the House and the Senate claim to be military veterans or ex-cops or something? You cowardly pieces of shit. You won't even stand up to this murderous dictator named Donald Trump? It's just unbelievable. All right. I feel absolutely compelled to focus on Ukraine during this podcast. I realize there's a lot of shit going on in this country that this orange son of a bitch continues to cause. He's insane. He's out of his fucking mind. He should be removed from office. But Ukraine, the slaughter of individuals, of people, of an entire country, and now Trump supports that slaughter. Trump and his fascist fucking half-brother Vladimir Putin. Two killers. Do you understand this? And one of them is the leader of this country. Two killers who are slaughtering people in Ukraine. On the 24th of February, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine in a major escalation of the Russo-Ukrainian war, which had started way back in 2014. The invasion, the largest and deadliest conflict in Europe since World War II, has caused hundreds of thousands of military casualties and tens of thousands of Ukraine civilians. As of 2025, Russian troops occupy about 20% of Ukraine. From a population of 41 million, about 8 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced and more than 8.2 million have fled the country by April 2023, creating Europe's largest mass refugee crisis since World War II. In late 2021, Russia massed troops near Ukraine's border and issued demands to the West, including a ban on Ukraine ever joining the NATO military alliance. After repeatedly denying having plans to attack Ukraine, on 24 February 2022, Russian President Putin announced, quote, a special military operation, end quote, saying that operation was to support the Russian-backed breakaway republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, whose paramilitary forces had been fighting Ukraine in the war in Donbass since 2014. Putin espoused irredentist and imperialist views challenging Ukraine's legitimacy as a state, baselessly claiming that the Ukrainian government were neo-Nazis committing genocide against the Russian minority in the Donbass, and said that Russia's goal was to, quote, demilitarize and denazify, end quote. Russian airstrikes and a ground invasion were launched on a northern front from Belarus toward the capital of Kyiv, a southern front from Crimea, and an eastern front from the Donbass toward Kharkiv. Ukraine enacted martial law, ordered a general mobilization, and severed diplomatic relations with Russia. Now, what I am quoting from are reports put together, some from Wikipedia, some from news reports, and I'm going to continue with this during today's podcast. Let you know that so that if you are not the least bit interested in what this podcast is going to put out there today, I understand. And if you decide, all right, Malloy, we'll see you Tuesday, I understand. But this is important to me because what Trump is doing is setting the stage for exactly what he said Volodymyr Zelensky was doing. Trump is setting the stage for World War III. Now, not that World War III necessarily has to be a nuclear exchange, although it would probably descend into that. But Trump is setting up a situation where our once and former allies in Europe will have no choice but to begin defending themselves against what this murderous son of a bitch Putin has in mind. How do I know what he has in mind? Oh, please, you know what he has in mind, too. Ukraine today, Poland tomorrow, maybe. All right, back to this narrative. Russian troops retreated from the north and the outskirts of Kyiv by April 2022 after encountering stiff resistance and logistical challenges. The Bucha massacre was uncovered after the Russians withdrew. In the southeast, Russia launched an offensive in the Donbass and captured Mariupol after a destructive siege. Russia continued to bomb military and civilian targets far from the front and struck the energy grid during winter of that year. In late 2022, Ukraine launched successive and successful counteroffensive in the south and east, liberating most of Kharkiv Oblast. Oblast is the Russian or Ukrainian word for, it would be similar to county or area or territory. Soon after, Russia illegally annexed 4 partly occupied provinces. In November, Ukraine liberated Kherson. In June 2023, Ukraine launched another counteroffensive in the southeast, but made few gains. After small but steady Russian advances in the east in the first half of 2024, Ukraine launched a cross-border offensive into Russia's Kursk Oblast in August, where North Korean soldiers were sent to assist Russia. The United Nations Human Rights Office reports that Russia is committing severe human rights violations in occupied Ukraine. The invasion by Russia into Ukraine was met with widespread international condemnation. The United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution condemning the invasion and demanding a full Russian withdrawal. The International Court of Justice ordered Russia to halt military operations, and the Council of Europe expelled Russia. Many countries imposed sanctions on Russia and its ally Belarus and provided humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. The Baltic states and Poland declared Russia a terrorist state. Protests occurred around the world, with anti-war protesters in Russia being met by mass arrests and greater media censorship. The Russian attacks on civilians have led to allegations of genocide. War-related disruptions to Ukrainian agriculture and shipping contributed to a world food crisis. It also contributed to war-related local environmental damage that has been described as ecocide, and the war has heavily disrupted global climate policy. The International Criminal Court opened an investigation into crimes against humanity, war crimes, abduction of Ukrainian children, and genocide. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Putin and for 4 Russian military officials. The Bucha massacre. The Bucha massacre was the mass murder of Ukrainian civilians and prisoners of war by the Russian armed forces during the fight for occupation of that city as part of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Photographic and video evidence of the massacre emerged on April 1st, 2022, after Russian forces withdrew from the city. According to the authorities, 458 bodies have been recovered from the town, including 9 children. Among the victims, 419 people were killed with weapons, and 39 appeared to have died of natural causes, possibly related to the occupation. A memorial wall was installed in Bucha with 500 names of killed residents. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights documented the unlawful killings, including summary executions of at least 73 civilians in Bucha. Photos showed corpses of civilians lined up with their hands bound behind their backs, shot at close range. An inquiry by Radio Free Europe reported the use of a basement beneath a campground as a torture chamber. Many bodies were found mutilated and burned, and girls as young as 14 were being raped by Russian soldiers. In intercepted conversations, Russian soldiers referred to these operations involving hunting down people in lists as filtration, torture, and execution. But why are there not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the streets right fucking now about what this murderous son of a bitch Donald Trump is doing, not just here, but all over the world now? This guy is like a murderous, fatal virus, and he's infecting. And I don't know if, well, of course you caught it, but the reference to North Korean troops in Europe fighting for Russia. And it's my understanding that these North Korean troops are great for marching in perfect order for their dear leader, but when it comes to fighting, they're a bunch of fucking slaughter pigs. They're just being mowed down. But why is that not just an incredible news event in this country? North Korean troops, what in the fuck are they doing in the middle of Europe? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.